Welcome back to another episode of Paranormal, the New Normal. I'm your host, as always, Jeremy, trying to bring a little normalcy to this world. Does it ever work? No, this world's not normal to begin with. But as always, I brought a guest to help me try to do that. And my guest today is Ryan Stacey, who is a private US UFO and paranormal investigator and also host of the Beyond the Tinfoil Hat podcast, in which I love having podcasters on, as everybody knows. So this should be a fun one. First things first, how you doing this morning, Ryan?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I can't complain. I rarely get to podcast this early, but whenever I do, it's always kind of a nice thing. I'm not all tired out from the day, so it works.
This is I haven't done an early podcast in a while either, so this is good.
Yeah, nice change of pace. I like it. But let me ask you this. This is the first thing I usually ask everybody. What got you into the paranormal?
I've always been fascinated with the paranormal. I don't know how that really started. I mean, I grew up with Ghostbusters, and of course, I think that was the spin for everybody. And eventually, I don't know. I just started having interest with the technology, like in terms of like trying to capture things that, that don't exist or may not exist in these realms. So I was always fascinated with the action of investigating into that process, which eventually led me down the road of investigations, which is what I do professionally as well as a private investigator. But then that was like kind of how I got started into paranormal specifically.
Yeah, I mean, Ghostbusters did turn a lot of people's heads towards paranormal. I mean, it was a little before my time. I mean, of course, I watched it as a kid, but it just, for me, it wasn't the start for me. I was already in the ghosts and stuff by the time I finally saw that movie. But it just,
I actually just watched it again last Sunday, and I think this Sunday we're watching number 2. It was kind of funny.
I just did a
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I just did a rewatch of them as well, about maybe like a year ago with my kids, because they wanted, with the new one coming out, they wanted to see the old one. So,
yeah. So paranormal eventually led me to the ufology as well. So, in terms of UFO, and as you mentioned in your opening here, in the name of your show, Paranormal, the New Normal. It is. I do find a lot of normalization, especially when I compare paranormal to the UFO community. Being in that community for professionally for a long time, I've come up with the matrix essentially to bridge the gap between the paranormal and the UFO subject, because they could very well be connected, and if they are connected, then it kind of normalizes itself. So,
which we'll get into that in a little bit for sure, because I definitely want to bring some of that up later on. But the second question I'd like to ask everybody is, what experiences have you had with any paranormal entity, whether it be ghosts, cryptids, UFOs, aliens? I mean, I'm sure your list is huge, but
well, personally, I have not had any encounter with anything physical, whether that being a being or a craft. I have spent about 8 years or so speaking to thousands of people who have had these encounters, and I do believe that they do exist. I just haven't, fortunately, I haven't had an encounter. My experience, but I am an experiencer. I have had what I'm calling a psychogenic experience, or some call that a download, or I forget the other terms for that, but essentially in that wheelhouse. And I had just basically a vision of some geometric, interesting, elaborate shape, which you can see on our website, experiencersupport.org. We just check the symbols and icon section. And through that symbol, I basically built the Experiencer Support Association, which is the group that I'm in right now.
And what is that organization? Because I can't say I've heard of it.
So have you heard of the Mutual UFO Network?
MUFON, of course, yeah.
Yeah, of course. So essentially it's the same thing, but better. And the reason why I say that is because I am a former Chief Investigator for MUFON Canada, National Chief Investigator for MUFON Canada. I am former Director of Training for MUFON National, so I was responsible for writing the newest Field Investigator Manual, which never got printed. And I was responsible for training all the investigators involved around 2017-18 at the time on how to investigate UFOs. Being a trained, licensed private investigator, I own my own private investigating company as well. So I have the skills and whatnot to work within that department. MUFON and I didn't see eye to eye, and I just took the idea and decided to do it on my own and have a Canadian version because I'm Canadian. And and MUFON HQ runs the way that they run in America, but Canada does business a little different. Let's just leave it on that.
Well, I mean, that's nothing wrong with that. I mean, a lot of great things are started because someone didn't like the way someone was doing something, so they wanted to start their own thing. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, MUFON's a great starting place for me. It was how, like, when I first started there, it was great. I mean, it helped me. The connections that I wouldn't have had that if I didn't start with MUFON. So I'm not trying to poop on it entirely. I'm grateful for those opportunities. But this subject is so complex. MUFON is a neophyte in comparison to what's actually going on. They're only focusing on UFO nuts and bolts and machines. They're not focusing on paranormal. They're not focusing on consciousness. They're not focusing on the abduction phenomenon, all the things that are harmful. So that's kind of where I spearheaded and focus more on the people to give them support because they're affected by it negatively. Even if we don't have answers for them, they still need support.
Interesting. Which, I mean, so if you don't mind me asking, actually, you basically just said it. Like, you guys go in a little deeper than MUFON does. MUFON is still just trying to classify UFO sightings by the old way of just saying, oh, it's a saucer in the sky, basically.
Yeah, essentially, I wouldn't say about deeper. It's a different perspective, but with our goals in mind is to get the answers. But our focus isn't broad, so we accept the possibility of everything because it could be connected. So if you were, so MUFON would only take in the UFO reports, do their studies how they would do it, and they do their work how they normally do that. That's fine for that group, but for all the other groups, this is an organization where we amalgamate all these thinking, all these thoughts, bring all those pieces of evidence together to see what they have in common with and see what the people have in common to kind of get a true reading of what this phenomenon actually could be. Because it's not just a craft in the sky that MUFON's looking for. It's all, some of these crafts could be interdimensional or transmedium, and that requires engineers and physics, like a higher level of education and things like that need to be approached on the subject in a higher level. So when you get the experiencer in the middle of that too, who's affected by it, has that belief, has maybe some residual evidence, so such as like an implant or some markings or anything like that, they require support. They require, if not the answers, then at least acceptance and belief and direction towards feeling better about the experience while accepting that it happened. Because there's a lot of negative things that happen. There's sexual abuse that happens with extraterrestrials and paranormal, succubus and all, sleep demons, all that other stuff. So again, that's kind of like and that's where I find the parallel between the industry, we'll say industries, because there's paranormal and there's UFO. But paranormal simply means not normal. So technically UFO is in that paranormal bracket, but don't tell anyone in ufology that, because they won't accept that.
Yeah, I mean, I always kind of considered UFO as part of the paranormal world.
Well, yeah, if you don't know what it is, it's not normal, right? So
yeah.
I mean, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So, yeah, I mean, and I like to think, like, if organizations like this existed back in the 60s, 70s, then maybe we would have a lot more proof from Barney and Betty Hill's experience than we do. And maybe they would have been much more willing to talk to people about it rather than trying to stay out of the public eye.
Yeah, and proof is very important, and that's a good point, especially with where I'm at right now, looking at ufology crumble in present time, even up to this morning. There's drama, of course. We were not in a place where this could openly share. So, like, there are things that have happened that have allowed opportunity for this to be open and normalized and not taboo anymore. That's just the UFO part. Paranormal kind of leans into that and kind of subject it, but they don't really focus on that. They're not mentioning that. But the proof also gets embellished now, because anybody can say, I'm a UFO expert. I'm a paranormal investigator. I'm an experienced. I have proof. I have evidence, and all this other stuff. And then as a trained investigator who constantly reviews different types of evidence in order to prep for, legal court proceedings and things like that, there ain't a lot of evidence out there that's solid enough. But that isn't necessarily a single person to blame. There's media involved. There's these ideas of what's expected because what's been circulated. And these people aren't investigators by trade, and they don't know how contaminating that they can be to the evidence with it while they're sharing it around and moving around, and how sensitive it is. So 9 times out of 10, a lot of my work is having a conversation with saying, that's a really cool story and that's a really cool experience, but you got no evidence. I can't help you. So the next time this happens, do this, and do this. But then the experience never happens again. So it's quite it's been a good ride, but I think I finally got it, figured out. Every once in a while I get a good case that's interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, well, Canada alone is a hotspot for paranormal activity. On my other show, we do a different topic every week on my other show. I do with 2 co-hosts, and my co-host Deborah is from Canada, so she always likes to bring the Canadian side to all the episodes. And Canada has a lot of weird stuff happen. United States is just as much, of course, but it seems like everything is in Canada. Like things you won't find in the United States, and most of the United States at least, it's in Canada. I mean, giants pictured on top of mountains. Like the amount of UFO abductions in Canada is obscene. Like you wouldn't even think it.
Am I able to share my screen for a second? Can I do that?
Oh, of course.
Perfect. Because I'm going to show you something too, just on that more. So on my website, it's called experiencersupport.org.
I got you. There you go.
Yeah. So this is just kind of in the evidence section. You go to investigations, evidence, visual evidence database, but you can also find it on the homepage. But my this map here, I'm keeping track of all the events that I've investigated, including declassified documents from Canadian governments. And this is my map of Canada, basically. Put the labels on here, but I am eventually starting to get some stuff here in America as well. But we have, So I just wanted to kind of validate your thought there, that here's some evidence in real time that I would suggest that. And I'm getting things, so that's audio from a pilot who saw an unidentified objects. We have a whole bunch of things in here. So
interesting.
I wanted to share that.
Well, I advise all my listeners to definitely go check out that website and see what he's uncovered. I mean, we brought up a map that the NADP does, the North American Dogman Patrol. I think not patrol. I always forget the P stands for, but and like they have a map of the United States and Canada with all their recorded experiences with dogmen, and Canada has a lot of creepy ones with dogmen, like a lot of like close encounters and like close calls. And
that's the interesting too, because a lot of people, I'm not the only person in the world who's doing a data set on paranormal or weird things. And the criteria that everybody has will also be different. Mine is quite minimal because my standards are quite high. I'm looking for specific evidence. I'm building a case that I'm trying to eventually use as evidence to support that the phenomenon exists in order to help the people with dealing with it. I don't care for the answers right now because we're not going to get that. But at least acknowledging that there are people experiencing something and they need some support in some way. So my angle's on the support side. So with that thought, I get dogman reports too. I get Bigfoot reports too, but there's no evidence. So with no evidence, I don't put it on the site because this is a visual evidence database. So
you don't get, you don't get footprints or anything even?
Well, it depends on what's being submitted, but then I talk to the witness and try to figure out how it obtained it. And it's like, oh, well, this is not my photo. Okay, well, that's great. Connect me with the original witness. Oh, I don't have that contact. Okay, well, carry on. So I dismiss a lot of things based on the chain of custody of the evidence, because there's so many things circulating and I can't trust unless I speak to the source. But I still cater to the individual who made the report, and we have good conversation and we talk about it, and everything's, copacetic and whatnot. But I am very picky with the evidence, and you'll notice that I don't have the Tic Tac videos on here. I don't have any of the Corbell videos on here. Those are evidence, but they've been recently debunked, so therefore doesn't go on the UFO and paranormal database.
Wait a minute. The Tic Tac video that the government used to announce that UFOs are real has been that's been debunked. I haven't heard about that.
Well, of course you wouldn't hear about it, because media only is pushing that theory and that fear agenda, right? So I'll name two people. You just look for Mick West and you look for Stephen Greenstreet. Just follow them for a little bit, and then you'll be able to put the pieces together that this ufology circuit is a scam. And as a private investigator, I have openly worked privately with individuals to find information, to uncover the fact that there are some people out there that embellish on this idea, take advantage of us experiencers, and they're just trying to sell and profiteer on this. So I actually work underground with a bunch of people undercover to outsource these things. And we have media that puts it out and explains it, but it doesn't get on CNN or the mainstream media, because that's not the agenda, or at least as it appears to be.
So I mean, I have my own theories and all this, but do you personally think that the government put that out there just to kind of try to create distraction from COVID or from something else?
Well, the opportunity was there. Will they do that? Can they do that? Yes, it's a probability. Is it likely? That's what we need to determine. Anything is possible. To distract from COVID, you can do anything to distract from COVID. COVID could be a distraction itself from other things, like who knows? So it's the intent that you need to understand, but there's also trust there. So if you don't trust your government already, it makes it hard to trust anything, even if it's good for you. So, so there's that is a whole rabbit hole. But to know for certain what their motive is, that's yet to be determined. Everything in the UFO fight, I guess, is on this belief that they're not telling us the truth and they're withholding, which is possible. But it's also possible they've told us the truth and everything. And then the problems that we're having in these circles is that we just believed someone else's opinion and took it as fact, and then it just blew up. So there's a lot of that, and that's in the paranormal community as well. Like Zach Bagans is in the news right now for faking, allegedly, without evidence right now, faking some of his TV shows that got canceled. So it's
Ghost Adventures and all those shows I never held much stake in,
but it's a different community, but it's the same thing. It's people in media making money on the big screen, putting their ideas and opinions out there, and then us as experiencers believing it, taking it because we've had an experience. The reason why we believe it is because these things are happening. These things are real. We just don't understand why they're happening or where they're coming from, but we get these ideas of misdirection, perhaps, of what they could be, which creates this fear, which creates this curiosity and distracts us. Because when we want to believe that there's an afterlife, we want to believe that there's extraterrestrials out there, because we don't want to know that when we die, nothing happens. We don't want to know that we're stuck here on this planet. So these are kind of getting into a philosophical conversation here, but I'm trying to stay positive. But the reality of what ufology and paranormal investigating is about is quite grim. And I'm speaking from experience, because when I first started in this industry, I was getting along with all these people because I checked all the boxes, and they liked my experience. They liked my my professionalism in terms of the skill sets that I have. But then I got to a point where I'm like, yo, you're all great and all these other things, but you're also wrong. So here's evidence that proves you're wrong. Where do we go from here? And then it's like, I'm not talking to you anymore. So and as a private investigator who also investigates like normal things, like missing people or infidelity, child custody, and things like that, the same thing happens. And what's common is people lie, and people embellish, and people, market and sell. The question is why, and especially when they're lying. So if the government is lying to us, the question is not if or what, it's why. Why are they lying to us?
Well,
what do you think?
Hold some candy in this hand and distract the kitties so they don't see what's in your other hand behind your back. I mean, that's kind of like what the government is known for. I don't know. I mean, I'm famous for saying like, oh, watch the next big pandemic. They're going to say Bigfoot's real.
Well, yeah. I mean, the timing of UFOs and stuff crashing and things like that at the end of COVID, and then we got a Ukraine war. Like the timing of all these things going simultaneously, if you will, is quite unique, but could be a coincidence, and it could be a cause and effect because of the pandemic, which literally destroyed the world. So that doesn't help the people that have seen ghosts, that seen these crafts, and know for certain and believe beyond a reasonable doubt, and will swear up and down that there are things happening, but yet they don't have any proof. Why don't they have any proof? Because maybe it's not existing in this three-dimensional world. Maybe we're seeing it in our mind, which doesn't mean we're mental, doesn't mean we're crazy. It's just we can't tell the difference between what reality we're seeing it in and which reality we're communicating in, because it's so advanced, perhaps. And how do we prove that?
Well, I mean, I had a guest on a few months ago now, Vincent Field. He wrote a book about this. He's a lucid dreamer / astral projectionist, and he wrote a book called Lucid Dreaming and Astral Projection. And he has traveled in his dreams to multiple different dimensions. And he says, like, he kind of made me a believer that that's maybe more than anything where these extraterrestrials are coming from, is they're really ultra terrestrials. They're coming from other dimensions. They're not coming from deep outer space like we always thought originally.
And if that's true, a lot of us, majority of us, are looking in the wrong place, which is why the effort is high. As like observing all the people in this community trying to solve the answers, the effort is tremendously high, but they're misdirected, or they could be, at least according to my theories and my research based on what I've observed. So of course, just because I have a different perspective on it doesn't mean my perspective is the way to go. It's just I've been in all of these perspectives, played the game, looked at the evidence, still end up shorthanded, and then I starting to find more evidence of something going on when I start studying the people. And I learn more about the phenomenon when I started studying the people than I ever have by studying the phenomenon, because the people I can measure, the people I can talk to. That's the focus, because if we focus internal, and if it is ultra-dimensional or interdimensional, that means it's local, right?
Yeah.
So which focusing our thoughts. So we talk about remote viewing or astral travel. So if you think aliens are in space and you astral travel to space, you don't find aliens. Well, that might make sense because they're not there. Or you can't get to space. Well, maybe that's because we can't get to space. So, this belief, right? That's a rabbit hole we could go down if you'd like. But people argue over the shape of the earth too. That's another thing too. I spent some time with the flat earth community, just trying to compare, the people and with ufology, because of course they butt heads, because it's all these other things and these theories. But as far as a theory goes, they're no different in terms of evidence, because these are ideas with lack of proof, and it could be possible. But you get in these arguments where your opinion is so preposterous, so big, and absurd, but yet ours is the same, and yet this is more civilized and things like that. So you get these interesting uniques. But with the flat earth community, what I find interesting and what they share with the ufology community is this belief that their space agencies are lying, and their space agencies are withholding information, or perhaps filming fake information, which is a possibility. but that doesn't mean that it's true.
I mean, there's a see we covered this in depth in my other podcast because
Yeah.
my co-host Scott
Yeah.
is so for the fake moon landing and the idea of a hollow moon, but I personally I don't know which way to go with this. I really don't. I mean, we haven't been back to the moon since 60, what was it, 67, something like that, 69. But we haven't been back there supposedly since then. And we tried, but we fail every time. And we can't get into space. And the fact that these astronauts are coming back to Earth, supposedly, with the G force it would require to get through the atmosphere. How could they survive that in like a tin bucket that they would have had in the 60s? It's not even as advanced, nowhere near as advanced what we have today. Like it's
So when
hard to
you
believe.
analyze the evidence, right, and the video and all these other things, and if you were to accept testimonial evidence, there are videos floating around of Buzz Aldrin who admits that it never happened. So, whether he's pretending now or because he's mad at the government today, or that really happened, you have, there are things that don't make it to mainstream. Working in the flat earth community, I got introduced to an underground community of where there's actual information that isn't making to mainstream. But the facts are there. So, it's quite interesting. And then, so just for prefix, I'm not supporting either theory of the shape of the earth. What I'm trying to emphasize is the shape of the earth is something we all should agree on, and not everybody can agree on that. So
I know, yeah. See, I know that, but
that, in terms of our belief, that's just an example of how many of us don't believe what we're actually being told. But is it possible that what we're being told is the truth? We're just choosing not to believe it because the truth does hurt. We're stuck in a box. We can't go anywhere. When you die, nothing happens. Or, there is space. There is other places. There are other things to go. And if you continue to work for as long as possible, eventually you'll get there.
yeah, I mean, I'll say it because I said before. I think I think flat Earth theory is ridiculous. I really do because I mean, we have satellites up there. Even if we couldn't get to the moon, we do have satellites up there, and I am a firm believer that those are real. At least most of them.
What's funny about that, the flat Earth community is totally raging right now because their belief was that these satellites are carried by high altitude functioning balloons. And what have we had recently in the news lately? Not one, but 4 potentially high altitude balloons carrying surveillance devices, which look like satellites. So there's evidence to support that theory now. But does that mean the earth is flat? And by flat, we're not talking about a frisbee. We're just talking, a non-rotating earth. So
yeah, which I mean, I don't.
And it could still have a spherical shape. So so again, not on either side. What I'm saying is there's not enough evidence to prove indefinitely the shape of the earth unless you believe what NASA is telling us 110%. So do you believe that everything that NASA puts out, regardless, is actually factual?
I don't. I mean, personally, I don't. But because NASA is paid for by the government, so I mean, of course not.
They very, very well could also be hiding these secrets. So that's the problem. Is that there's that genuine, huge belief that we're being lied to when we have no evidence to prove whether we've been lied to at all. We just think that because they've lied about some things. This is an all statement, right? So they do lie, but do they lie about everything? Right?
Yeah, I mean, I try to think about it as logically as like, what would the government benefit from lying about, and what wouldn't they benefit from lying about? Because I mean,
well, the benefit for lying about the Earth being different than the way that it is that there's more land and more resources that are being reserved that we don't have access to. And by not letting us have access to it, therefore, whatever they need it for can be used for that, and they don't have to share it. The Garden of Eden was in the center of the earth, in the Arctic Circle. Not, and once that we were kicked out of that, we would have been in the area that we're in now is the next area. And what's beyond that, right? The story of Atlantis has 4 concentric circles. Atlantis could be the entire Earth, not just a continent on this planet. So there's like so many conspiracies. So I'm kind of going all over the place, but what I kind of want to emphasize is that as an investigator, I've investigated every single one of these theories to try and figure out what everything has in common, because inside every belief there is some truth as well as lies and opinions. But what is the truth in all that, and how to bring it all together and regulate it? And the only thing that can be measured is the people.
Well, see, it's funny because I've had a couple different people on that have talked about Atlantis, like that was the pure thing they focus on. And one of them wrote a book, and he supposedly, him and his partner, found where Atlantis is. He believes it so thoroughly that he says, like, if you read his book, there's nothing, you'll have no doubt about it, because he has given like 99% proven that it's where it's supposed to him. It's somewhere in the northeastern African desert, as where Atlantis, at least the main city, was. He believes that they were the first democratic city, and they have little minor nation states all over the world, basically. But he believes that's where they were until they got wiped out by the Greeks and Egyptians. But he also, and then I had another Atlantis person who believes that he wrote Tim Kelly, who wrote the book The Hidden History of Humanity. He believes that Atlantis was extraterrestrials. It was extraterrestrials mating with humans, and that's what made Atlantis. And the extraterrestrials were the reasons that Atlantis was able to grow faster than any other civilization on Earth ever did. Mm-hmm. But it also led to their destruction, according to him. And I don't know. I can see both theories, kind of. I can, like, whether Atlantis was just really an advanced human civilization or an advanced hybrid civilization of humans and extraterrestrials. Who knows? But
we accept a lot of things. We don't deny that there was an advanced civilization. We don't deny that it appeared to be 4 concentric circles. What we're questioning is the location. And that kind of brings us full circle to what we talked about earlier, is if we're misdirected on the location, and we are spiritual beings that have the ability to use our mind to travel, and then we're using our mind to travel to the wrong place, we will never find it. If you do some research on Hyperborea, the Hyperboreans is a civilization in the center, in the North Pole, in the Arctic. I do a lot of research on this because it's part of Canada. You will learn that it's possible that the Garden of Eden story started there, which therefore is Atlantis, which is the same thing, which therefore is Valhalla as well for the Norse mythology. So there's a lot of parallels there. And if we left the Garden of Eden because we were, free thinking, or, and where would they send us? Well, that's where we are now. And if, and that's where, where these ideas come from, and where now we have all of these giant megaliths and pyramids and these big structures that we don't know how they were built. But if we were inside the center of the Arctic, in the Garden of Eden, while they lived outside here, and then all of a sudden they had to move us because we multiplied, made bigger space. So now that's why we're finding all these things, because that's where they were. Where are they now? In the next circle, which therefore would be beyond this alleged ice wall. So again, I'm not pushing for the flat earth theory. What I'm trying to emphasize that in this world of conspiracies, if you believe in this flat earth theory and you actually listen to the evidence that's around it, and you bring these conspiracies on that we're having trouble with, it fits, which means it solves the problems. It gives you answers for everything. Can't be proven, of course, but it fits. Then it makes sense, but doesn't mean it's true. you remove that from the theory and you look at everything else and you have all these issues and you have all this chaos. That chaos is because it doesn't make sense because you're using the wrong map, you're using the wrong place, we're using the wrong time. Our calendars aren't even the proper calendar. The first of the April 1st originally was the first day of the year, and we originally had 13 months. There's a lot of things that happen in this world that used to be different. And now we have all this chaos. And why did they need to change it? So there's evidence to show that something needed to change. But is that evidence because we've advanced and we've learned that we were wrong? And that's a possibility too. But if you compare other civilizations to what they knew so much more than what we know now. We know less, but someone still knows, right? So it's just this huge chaos. And then I come back in order to live in this life, because accepting this reality, it's dark, it's grim. But why would they do that? Why would they lie to us? And if that was true, if anything was being withheld, I like to think that they're doing it on purpose to create a better life, create a better existence, create a better thought. Because the thought of us being trapped, the thought of us being slaves, the thought of us being all these things, it's not a good thought. And if we think bad things, we do bad things.
See, okay, so many wormholes jumped down that one. So many. But see, I'm just gonna start with this because I had this theory, and I don't know if I originated this theory or if someone else said it and I just kind of took it as my own. I like to openly admit that first always, because I don't know or remember where it came from. And I've blown other podcasters' minds with this. Like Tori from Be Afraid of the Dark podcast still says like her mind's still reeling from this idea. But I have a theory that Earth is a prison planet, and that that extraterrestrials have basically a galactic UN or dupe, or pick a sci-fi show and take the counsel from it. And they get rid of extraterrestrial species they don't want around anymore, or that pose a threat, which would explain cryptids such as Sasquatch or Dogmen or the Jersey Devil. Not Jersey Devil, because there's only one of them, supposedly. Chupacabras, even maybe, lake and sea monsters, maybe. Like, all these cryptids that we know live in mass populations and are not like one-offs, like the Jersey Devil or the Frogman or something like that. And that's the other part of that theory, is that's why we see UFOs in the sky all the time, is because they're basically prison wardens, and they're watching over Earth to make sure that none of the things escape. And that's why there's a lot of instances where you see a Sasquatch and then there's a UFO sighting at the same time. And the only thing I can't put into this theory 100%, well, I can, but I don't want to because I don't know if it's true or not. Could humans have been prisoners too that got dropped here? Or did we develop naturally? Or were we already here when the aliens decided to do this? Yeah, humans are the outlying piece in that I can't like put a certain thing on, but
yeah. So yeah, okay. Wow, you added another layer to this. This is great. Something that you said too that I thought was interesting as well is this: there is also some clapback with anthropology and cryptozoology, where Bigfoot is a creature of this earth, and there is no association of paranormal or extraterrestrial or UFO with it. But yet we do see some reports where Bigfoot's seen, he disappears, he or she disappears, and then next there's a UFO that takes off. Like that is kind of common. Now, is that reality, or is that a combination of these thoughts mixed together and then these different side beliefs and all this other stuff? Because that's confusion on its own. And Alex Bistretta, if you ever watch my stuff, which I don't think you do, but I know we always argue back and forth about the possibility. He's an anthropologist, so he's got the background to be able to say Bigfoot's this and Bigfoot's that. But as far as evidence goes, I always twist it and say, well, you can't prove it either, so therefore we could be right too.
The whole idea of Bigfoot and the whole Gigantopithecus like theory, that was a theory I always stuck to for Bigfoot for the longest time. until I started hearing stuff that made me question it. But for most of my life, that's the theory I stuck to.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't know. I mean,
okay,
I could see.
I also let's talk about ancient astronaut theory and then the Anunnaki and Sumerians, cuneiform, all that other stuff. So the actual, let's see if I can point to my TESA symbol there. That's actually the cuneiform Anu for the Sumerian religion. The reason why we have that symbol is it's also was part of my vision as well, but it's the oldest symbol that was ever recorded for God. So if as an investigator, that would be source. That would be the closest thing to the original idea as possible. Everything else has been whatever and changed and shifted. So on that belief, let's assume that the ancient astronaut theory and the Sumerian Anunnaki stories are accurate, right? Then there is this being called Enkidu, which was created by Enki.
Wait a minute. Enkidu, like Gilgamesh's
correct
best friend. Yeah, okay. I had a feeling.
So if you look at the description, so you're familiar with the Epic of Gilgamesh? So the king refuses to die, and then he was lonely, and then Enki, which is the Christian Satan, which is actually in Sumerian is a good guy. So there's a flop there. We can get into that if you want. But so with Gilgamesh wanting a companion made by Enki, which made Enkidu or Enkidu, however you want to say it, the description of that. So Enkidu is basically a very tall ape-like creature that Gilgamesh, who was a very tall giant king associated with as a demigod, half Anunnaki, half Sumerian. If I'm, fact check this to make sure it's accurate, but I'm trying to pull from thoughts here. A part of my brain I haven't used in a while. And so he wrestles this beast and eventually becomes friends with it. And eventually they work together. And then in the end of this epic, Gilgamesh died, or not Gilgamesh, Enkidu died. But then he comes back in spirit, and then there's this paranormal thing and mysticism, transmedium, and there's a fight with a robot. There's it's chaos. But this is back in antiquity, back in the day. So if that was accurate then, that should be accurate now. And if that's the source that you can use, then that alone proves the possibility of this UFO and paranormal connection with a Bigfoot type creature. But Zecharia Sitchin has been discredited. People try to discredit him after he died. Coincidentally, everyone who dies gets discredited. They don't get discredited when they're living. But, there's a lot of attacks towards the idea. So I'm just saying, imagine that being the source, that being the original story, and it was translated properly. That Sumerians also believed in a flat earth, non-rotating earth. The Sumerians also believed in, all of these things that we're talking about. And that's the first civilization. It's just our civilization right now that is learning that it's different. But there's several civilizations prior to that followed the same thought over years. So why change it?
Exactly. I mean, and yes, I see. I know that big Gilgamesh because I'm a huge mythology lover, and I always bring up Enkidu on my show too because there's a lot of belief that he could have been a Sasquatch or he could have been a Dogman even.
Yeah, very
either
well.
is possible, and I mean,
yeah,
the fact that in ancient Egypt, Anubis was basically a Dogman god, and I actually had a guest who was in the army with his buddy who was part of his troop. They were in Egypt, and he saw a statue of Anubis, and he didn't know anything about Egyptian gods, and he started freaking out and asking him, "What's that? What's that?" Right. And they're like, "That's an ancient Egyptian god, Anubis." And he's like, "I've seen the same exact thing in my backyard twice when I was a kid," and he grew up in New Orleans.
Well, yeah.
Rural territory.
Connection to Dogman is interesting too, and I've heard that, and it does make sense because where does the ideas come from? I mean, people draw what they don't understand. So, like, let's let's talk about the sun disk for a minute. Hello. So the sun disk in Egyptian mythology, which is the circle with the wings attached to it.
Yeah.
Some people believe that to be, an actual flying craft of some sort. But what if it's not? What if it could be a planet? It could be a flying saucer. It could be a whole bunch of things because the circle's in the middle. So when they drew back in the day, they drew things to explain the characteristics that they observed without knowing how it worked. So another example is we look at angels or we look at the Anunnaki. There's wings attached to them. But did they literally have wings, or did they put wings on them because they could fly? We didn't know how they could fly, but we know birds can fly and birds use wings.
Exactly.
So with the sun disk, maybe it was a UFO, maybe it's a planet, Nibiru, if you wanted the planet X, and the wings are just symbolic to suggest that it flies, it moves. And if you look at the sun disk this way, it appears to be an orb. But if you look at the sun disk this way and look up and imagine there's no wings there, what do you have? A flying saucer.
Yeah, which and plus the idea that cavemen, they all had paintings of, cows and other things they would see on a daily basis in their caves. But oh gee, what's that next to the goat? Oh, that's a flying saucer looking painting in their cave, which they would have no idea what the hell they're drawing unless they actually saw it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the whole thing. You mentioned the Arctic. I'm a big proponent of the idea that hollow Earth theory. I kind of can get behind that more than I ever can get behind flat Earth, because one, missing 411 plus the cave systems in the United States kind of match up. That's the biggest proof right there. And Antarctica, you're not allowed to go there unless you're granted permission by the UN.
And you can only go so far. You can't go everywhere.
Yeah, you can go to their little. I've seen pictures of it. You could go to the little bases on the coast of it, basically. But which makes me think, like, what if there is in Antarctica? Because I'm a big proponent too for living dinosaurs. What if there is like a savage land type area in the middle of Antarctica? And that's why we're not allowed there, is because we would basically be killed.
It's interesting because I have a map over here. I have tons of maps from different civilizations to kind of figure out the answer to that question, amongst many other. But this particular map that I'm pointing at right over here shows Antarctica, but there's no ice, and it shows it in a circle as if it was a flat map. And the thing is too with the I forget how to say it, but anyways, this map is basically the globe map. It's you put it on a globe and then it becomes together, and it's just how it is when you open it. But this particular map shows what appears to be dinosaurs or saber-toothed tigers and all these things that we learned about. So in history, we do have evidence of all these things existing, and I think what's just being changed is that we're being lied about is the location of it, the time frame, everything else, because they changed the calendar, they changed time when they introduced time zones, right? Do time zones actually need to happen? We just have universal time already, but then everybody has their own time because we want to have a fair amount of time of daylight. And let's look at the Tower of Babel idea. Since you like to go into that Tower of Babel very well could be inside Garden of Eden in the center of the earth. And because we were able to build something so great while working together, we were unified, we were able to reach the heavens. Then all of a sudden, God decides, let's separate them and give them different languages so they can't work together and they can't talk to each other, which would explain why we're all confused right now.
Exactly. But see, it's the idea that even though we have different languages,
Yeah.
we all can agree on a lot of the same things. Like there are stories of Sasquatch from all over the world, and I mean, Native Americans have stories of them going back hundreds and hundreds of years, like a century almost. I mean,
And if
to the
we
point.
accept all these things as being true, in fact, I think we would get along quite well. It's just there's a decision to take that away from us, to distract us from that. And that's why I keep asking the question, why? Why?
Exactly. I mean, it's it makes you. I mean, we just did a conspiracies bracket back in, I want to say December on this. Yeah, because thankful for cryptids. Okay. Oh no, November, because it was thankful. It was a Thanksgiving thankful for conspiracies bracket, and see, the Illuminati / New World Order like conspiracy to me has always just seemed too unique to not be true. Like just the fact that all these things happen, but no one can explain why.
In order for that to work, some of us would have our parliament or our government would have to be in on it or be in the dark just as well. So there would have to be some intermediate group of individuals that keeps the controllers at bay, but yet says enough to the current people in government to get them to do what's needed to do without them questioning it. So
Well, I mean,
in order for that to work, because the reason why I'm saying that would be under the idea that it's systematic and it's organized crime. Let's just say, for lack of a better word, if there are no controllers, if there are no people that exist, then they can come in at any time, take us, do whatever they want, and all those things. So because we don't live in a world where we're constantly in fear in this three-dimensional reality of these things, that doesn't mean they don't exist. But if they do exist and they're protecting us and preserving us, for what purpose? Why? If they don't exist, there's evidence to support that because it's not happening. But why do we believe that? Right? So there's a whole bunch of different things that have happened in the past, and we've compiled all these thoughts together to come up with new conspiracies within conspiracies.
well, I mean,
but what's the truth?
That's the truth is out there. That's the only thing I'll say.
Well, what matters? What really matters? If I told you, if you learned today that the Earth was indeed a non-rotating planet, and we are and we're the only planet, and everything we have is inside here, and that's the truth. And you know, does that change anything?
I mean, if we brought it back to the idea that then it would be the sun that rotates around the Earth and the Earth stands still, like I could honestly, I mean, I wouldn't have that much trouble believing it if someone told me like all of a sudden like, oh, that's the truth. Like they've been hiding it for 500 years. They burned Copernicus at the stake because of what he said, but it was really it's only because he was trying to sway you away from the truth. And I mean, I don't know. It's Templars existed, Freemasons still exist. I mean, for God's sake. So it's just there's so many groups out there that are secret societies and have been around since medieval times or earlier even. I mean, I'm a big fan of Assassin's Creed games, so I get a little in my head when it comes to Templars.
I love those games for sure.
So I mean, anybody who's into the paranormal conspiracy world should love those games, I think. But it's just the whole idea that some society's been controlling us since ancient times, and they still exist.
Can you see where I'm pointing there?
I can see you pointing. I can't really see what you're pointing at.
Oh, that's a square and compass right there.
Oh, okay. I can see it now. You're kind of blocking it with your hand. Yeah.
Right. Behind those images is a square and compass clock, and then inside that shrine down here is a Templar mask, and then everything else inside there is a bunch of Masonic regalia because that I've earned over the years because I'm actually a Mason. Too.
I saw that on your profile. I saw you were a Freemason, and I was like, oh, interesting.
And it's interesting because I have several degrees and I'm in high ranking, and I haven't seen anything, at least what I've learned so far, that really resonates with this conspiracy on the outside. That doesn't mean it's not true, because there's still degrees I haven't achieved yet, but I'm not seeing that on the inside based on the way that Masonry actually is from my experience. However, I do see evidence that there are people that were part of the organization and then did bad things.
Oh, yeah. As any organization has that, though.
Yeah. So Paul Bernardo, for one, serial killer, was a junior warden of a Masonic lodge in Canada. So, that, made a very bad rap for that, because his friends and Masons were also police officers, and they covered it up because they didn't want to have a disdain to the lodge. And then once that comes out to the public, it's a secret. You withhold it, and then the church, and then we lied, and all these other things. But these secret societies wouldn't exist if we were able to be open with our thoughts and beliefs. St. Patrick allegedly could be a Mason, because he was pagan before, but he had to do Christian stuff or his family would be killed. And when he was caught practicing his pagan beliefs on top of preaching the Christian thing, that's when he was killed on March 17th. So the St. Patrick's Day that's coming up is actually a death day that we would be celebrating. So even holidays are not exactly what it is. But the reason why we have underground communities is because there's not enough comfortability. Ufology is a cult. Paranormal is a cult.
It is.
Right? Because we can't be open about it. And that doesn't, and there could be bad people in paranormal. There could be bad people in ufology. There's bad people in Masonry. But there's also
yeah, good. I mean, exactly. There's yin and yang always exists no matter what you're talking about. That's the thing. And
do the Masons control the world? I don't think so, because
I mean, I don't think so either. I don't think Masons do, at least, or at least if they do, they're only a small part of it. It's only very high up in the society that actually has something to say about it. I think the rest of it's all for show somewhat, but
I mean, we do burn units. Like, we do a lot of charity. Like, there's no, I don't think.
Oh, I mean, yeah, of course you do.
The world, but it's still possible, because maybe someone in a higher rank is also affiliated with that lodge, but that doesn't mean. So what I'm kind of getting at is the association of groups don't really matter. It's this idea of a group of people with a different thought that's in control of this group of people. So if we all just had a common thought or a group thought and a plan to work together, then we wouldn't have any of this chaos. So if the Earth was flat or non-rotation, then there wouldn't be any borders to control, because we all take care of the one thing that's inside that area. We might not fight anymore. We might have unity. We might have peace. But all this chaos exists because we all had the opportunity to come up with our own ideas and take territory back then. And some people might be fighting back for their own territory. So are you familiar with the Tartarian scenario?
Okay, before I say this, I just Googled this out of curiosity. Yeah. And apparently Buzz Aldrin and John Glenn Jr. were both Freemasons. Yeah. If there's any conspiracy to all my moon landing people out there, then that might be part of it. Just saying. But I don't know. It's weird that two astronauts were in the
landing might be fake. And because Buzz Aldrin is also saying it never happened, and him being part of a Masonic group, then it's implied that the Masons covered up the moon landing. But that doesn't mean that happened. It just means they were part of this group at the same time they were part of the United States Air Force.
I mean, I get it. I mean, George Washington was a Mason too, but I don't think he was doing anything bad at all, because George Washington was.
Yeah, our Prime Minister, first Prime Minister, George MacDonald, he was a Mason as well. So, like, a lot of our countries were created by that group thought. But where's the lineage of that and all that other stuff? Blah 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 blah. So,
but what we were talking about, I've heard the name. I just never really looked into it that much. like the Tartanian name, like theory.
Yeah.
I've heard the name. I've heard it mentioned, but
research that it's essentially a land full of giants, not giant humans, of course, free energy, advanced technology. Basically, you like Assassin's Creed. So the which one is it? Is it Unity? The one when he's in Paris and London, like the steampunk one?
yeah, is that Unity or yeah? I think
Syndicate.
Syndicate. Yeah, I always get those ones confused.
So just imagine Tartarians kind of living in that mindset or that style. But the thing that's interesting about the Tartarians is that they're part of a land which we now call Russia, and Russia and Ukraine are obviously fighting, and then Ukraine is the last where the Nazis went. So there's a whole bunch of things, and you look at history on its own. But the existence of this other civilization that had control of the world at that time, if that's true, and that is Russia right now, maybe they're fighting back to take what was originally theirs. Right? Not saying war is good, not saying either side is bad, like it's all bad, but it's just that little piece of history to understand their roots. Where's that coming from? So there's so much change, there's so much freedom for us to have difference of opinions, but it'd be interesting to go back in the day and observe when all this land had no borders and how they decided that this line was my line and this line is your line.
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
how that magnified and how that did that. Right.
I mean, makes you think though, did some group come up with the idea of manifest destiny?
Well, if you go back to Sumerians and the Anunnaki, and we talk about Utnapishtim or Ziusudra, which is also Noah, that fable or that story, if we were the only civilization at that time, and a flood was about to happen, and in Sumerian mythology, it was the guy on the earth that helped Noah, which is the Satan equivalent in the Christian Bible. So, and it was the guy in the sky, which is the Christian God, who wanted to kill humanity. So there's a flip in that too. So essentially, Satan helped man to create, and survive the flood. But the thing is, they have this civilization, it's advanced. They go up for 40 days and 40 nights, perhaps not in a submarine, maybe a spaceship, a rocket of some sort, and hang out in the waters above. But when they came down, they had to make up for lost time. So then they divided. All of a sudden, there was two camps. And they're both working for the same goal, but they had two camps in order to make up for lost time of this one camp. And then but there's still only one God. This camp tries to appease the God. This camp tries to appeal that God. God favors one camp over the other. And then they start fighting against each other because they all want love from the same God. And then you multiply that over the years. And I theorize that that's the reason why we have all these borders and divisions, because we're all fighting for our version and belief in what God wants. And we're fighting with each other when we should be working together.
I mean, yeah, there's so many people that could be put like at the precipice of this, of that theory of like the person behind it that's trying to put piss against each other. Like there's so many different groups, so many different people, so many different societies that could be like
this is cause of it. A universal result of daddy issues. The entire world is, looking for dad or mom. Let's it's possible God could be a female as well. Let's not rule that out. Or some mommy issues, the parental issues, right? Because we were created, we know that. We don't know how we got here. We don't know how to be raised. We're just raising ourselves on our own. Let's, why don't you come back and tell us what's what so we can get along?
See, I was brought up as a Protestant, so I grew up believing the creationism like theory. And
Uh-huh.
then once I went rebel and stopped wanting to be that, I totally became a full believer in the evolutionary theory.
Uh-huh.
And since I got into the paranormal like a decade ago and really got into it. I mean, I was always into paranormal, but when I really got into it, I started questioning everything. And that's the scary thing is I don't even know what to believe anymore. Like, is it one or the other? Is it a combination of both or something I never heard of?
Or none of the above.
Exactly, yeah. Like I said, that's something I never heard of. Like it's got to be something, but
You know, this idea of God existing could be made up too, because we have
oh,
to.
I'm a big believer of that one.
But we need something to look forward to. We need to believe that there's an afterlife. We need to know that this is there, because why would we continue to work on, you know, in some places of this earth are bad. Why would we continue to endure that? Right?
Well, I mean,
Unless we knew that there was something we could get in return for working longer to pay for taxes that go to a program that we have absolutely no control over.
I'm
And
a big believer in the theory that I've been told is true by a lot of mediums and psychics because they've said they've heard this from spirits.
mhm,
Is that I mean, the fact that it's another dimension or it's it's a dimension or it's something else we don't even know exists yet,
mhm,
and it's basically a waiting room at the DMV where your spirit goes when you pass,
right.
and you come back. You get reincarnated as another person on Earth, or if you reached your ultimate goal, whatever that may be,
Yeah.
you may get to go to someplace that is unknown. Some may call it heaven, but it's unknown what it really is. But they say the afterlife is just like a DMV waiting room, which maybe maybe that's purgatory. Maybe that is purgatory, but I don't know.
And the other thought too on that subject is, if they are as powerful as we believe them to be, then they have control to come in at any time. They can do whatever they want at any time. They can present themselves at any time. So why, if that's possible, why don't they do that? And if they can't do that, do you really think human civilization is powerful enough to tell these extraterrestrials not to interfere with us? So they would have to work together, but why? And if they don't
Well,
come in and hijack over us because they have the capability of doing so, do they actually exist?
well,
You see, this
I
is
mean,
so, and the problem, the root of all of this, and again, studying the people, if you normalize it, right? Normalize it down, what makes sense is that the human beings were left, God left, and we've been spending all this time winging it, trying to figure it out.
oh, like the supernatural theory I like to call it, because God went on vacation to explore the cosmos for a
How
good
much
couple of
child
thousand
support
years.
that guy owes?
I like to call that supernatural theory, but
Jesus. So, no pun intended there. Hey, Lisa, I see you in the chat. Hi, Lisa.
oh, hello, Lisa. Thank you for watching.
Anyways, I mean, I'm having fun with you this morning. This is my first time I had a morning podcast. It's not serious. I'm normally serious with my stuff, so I really appreciate exploring these things. I don't want to, where do you want to go?
Oh, I mean, if you want to keep going for a little bit, I could make it a two-parter. I was kind of going that route already anyway, so
It's up to you.
yeah, I'm down to go more. I'm having fun with you. So
Yeah, if you got more questions, let's go.
well, you brought up Alien, so let's knock down the theoretical glass like Stone Cold here and go down that wormhole. Because you just made me think of X-Files the way you're describing it, like with the humans and aliens having a deal. Like I always go back to the old X-Files, Smoking Man and Alien like groups having deals. And
But like, see, that doesn't make sense. So okay, let's just talk that through. You know, we're an extraterrestrial race that is so powerful, and we come from a million light years away, yada yada, and we want to make a deal with you, talking apes, and we promise that we won't do anything harmful to you in exchange of doing all these other things. So the business deal with the aliens, they could kill us. There's a threat, so we have no choice to do that. But what is threatening about us that if we were to say no about that deal? So why not just, why do you have to make a deal with us? Just do it.
Here's why. And this, I mean, I live in Gardner, Massachusetts. I've said it in my podcast before, so I have no problem saying it. But I've been told, and it's a huge UFO hotspot, and I've been told it's because of the minerals that are in the mountain that we live on.
Right.
And I've been told we're basically a refueling station for UFOs.
Okay.
So maybe we're not exactly a commodity this planet.
So
maybe we're just a gas station.
To make sense of that, I often thought about that too, because to hide that allows us to work, that allows us to get things that we need to do and spend our money and have a good life to distract us, because that belief that we need to do all these other things. When we pay taxes go to the government, and the government does all these things to help us, but then the taxes go elsewhere too. So if the taxes are going elsewhere to pay for people to do all these other work elsewhere for all these other things, that would make sense. And then because there's this idea that we need to do all these things to get these things, and if we don't do these things, we lose these things, we go to jail. But taxes don't actually exist. The story of the taxes was simply when in the Roman times, where they're like, here's 5 coins, you have 5 coins. When I come back in a month, you're going to give me 7, you're going to give me 7, but there's only 10 coins. How do we do that? Well, figure it out. I come back to collect. Thank you. I got your 7 coins. That's my 2 coin interest. Where is it? Well, I only have 3 coins because I gave 2 coins to him. Okay, well, you owe me. Well, where am I going to get these? Well, and then that's how that started. And then currency, and then we're going to get in, what we're now we're looking at cryptocurrency. Money is also the root of all evil in terms of.
Oh yeah, money was created by man to control man. That's all it is.
We have that belief because if I don't work, I don't pay for these things. If I don't pay for these things, then I lose these things, such as the house and things like that. But I need the house because I need to live somewhere. But yet you go to like third world countries and some of those kids can be very happy despite how much they're suffering. They don't have television, they don't have that. They've been doing pretty good roughing it, but they're happy. Some of them are happy. We have everything we want in these beliefs and all this other stuff, but we're miserable because because we don't know what we're working for.
Exactly.
We know we have to do it. We trust the system. We understand the system, but we haven't seen the big purpose. And the government doesn't tell us that. But someone has to know the end game. Someone has to know. So what do you think the end game is?
I see. That's where, to me, it always goes back to extraterrestrial. It has to. Whether you want to call it God or Allah or any of the other names out there for it, in the end, to me, it's always got to be extraterrestrial in origin or ultra-terrestrial in origin as well. Could be as well. But there's something out there that we are working towards. I gave up on the idea a long time ago that, I'm going to be a good person because I'm going to go to heaven. Like, I gave up on that when I was a freaking teenager because that's what teenagers do. But
good belief. And the Romans also used to sell tickets to heaven. They would sell papyrus with your name on it for $1. You have to purchase that. And that guaranteed you. Yeah, that started with the Romans as well. And Romans, that's when Catholicism and all this other stuff came in. That's when all of a sudden the God in the sky, which is Enlil, and the God in the earth, Enki, flipped, because in the Christian Catholicism, right, the God, Lord of the sky, is actually the Lord of the earth. And the Lord of the earth is actually the Lord of the sky. So when you remove the names and look at the characteristics, the Christian Satan is the Sumerian Enki. The Christian God is the Sumerian Enlil. But the Sumerian Enlil didn't give a shit about us. The Sumerian Enki gave a shit about us and helped us. But in Christian, That's the bad guy.
Yep.
Okay?
I mean, I'm a huge fan of Milton's Paradise Lost.
Before
So
that was the same. Everything. And then Romans come in, and then now we have taxes, now we have this, now we have that. That's what happened. But why did they decide to change that? Everything that's happening right now is consequence to us living this way. These old habits haven't been broken. But why did they make that decision to make the change then? Why did the Romans change the calendar? Why? So what do you think their reason was to do this whole changeover then? And that's not that long ago.
yeah, and I mean, it seems like it is, but realistically, it's not a long time ago. But I mean, they say it has something to do with farming, supposedly, and that's why they did the whole change of everything from calendar to daylight savings time is because of farming. And I mean, it makes sense if you think about it for farming, but I mean, could it be as simple as that?
And that makes sense for
Maybe.
us to universally communicate within this world and working together. That makes sense. However, when you're doing measurements on trying to figure out the world's problems, that is not an accurate tool to use because that's not the correct date. It's not the correct time, and we're not in the correct place. We're using the wrong method.
I agree 100%. And I don't know. I think personally, I don't know. I mean, part of me wants to believe it's just because of farming. Like, it's just, oh, farmers need longer days, so we're going to make daylight savings time. Like, I get that. That can make sense almost, but I mean, I hate time zones. As a podcaster, I freaking hate time zones.
Yeah, it's challenging sometimes.
I've podcasted with people in Australia and the UK, and it's just trying to set up a time to do it is freaking impossible sometimes.
Yeah, I haven't done anyone in UK yet because I don't feel like starting my podcast at 3 a.m. So.
I mean, I typically try to go like on Saturday afternoons or something with them. That way, it's only evening for them. It's afternoon for me. But I mean, I don't know. It's just I don't know. I mean, the calendars, I can't explain why they exist. I know there's different ones. I know different ones are still active. I mean, the Chinese have a completely different calendar than us. Like their year doesn't start till what is it? January, February? I always forget, but
yeah, I forget that one too. February, I think.
I think it's February if I'm not. I think it's right around Valentine's Day, actually, if I'm not mistaken. But
yeah,
I could be completely wrong on that. But it's strange because like, why all this? Why do we need different calendars all around the world? Like, it should all be on one. We all should be on the same day at the exact same time, and it would.
We were given the freedom to make these changes, and that's because there's lack of parenting. That's what I mean. God left, gave us, here's the plan. Everyone copied it, and then all of a sudden, they're like, well, he ain't here anymore, or she ain't here anymore. We're in charge. We're going to run the world the way we want it, which is why we need that being to come back to be like, hey, sorry, I was off saving another problem. Now that I'm here, let me set everybody straight. The absence of God with the belief of God is very dangerous for humanity.
Yeah, I mean,
like, would you work for a company and not be able to meet or communicate with the CEO?
I mean, I worked for companies like that before where I
CEO exists, right?
Supposedly. And I could email him or her supposedly, but will I ever get an answer? Who the hell knows? But
you got to follow your chain of command and things like that too. But I mean, like, the company's got to run. Who's running the company? So if God's in charge of this company, where, this is how we're supposed to be, or are we on the bottom level where we're just, keeping the cycle go? Depends on what division we are in this business. And that's the slave, that's the farming, that's the whole thing. So what are we doing on this sub level to help those in the middle class who are helping those in the higher class? What the hell are they doing?
Exactly. I mean,
You're helping them.
Nothing. I agree. I mean, it's just I agree 100%. I mean,
hang out on the other side of the ice wall where everything's free energy. Like, are there just more slaves in this entire thing? Because someone's got to be living good. There would have to be a purpose. Otherwise, we all should be living good.
I mean, I've heard a theory before, and it's as hard as me to believe it. What if this originally was just a planet, and the dinosaurs were actually the creatures that lived here, and we all were invading species, and we just killed them off because we wanted the planet?
Yeah, and that's possible. And how would we do that? Well, someone would have to be able to control a meteorite to do that, on point to do that, and somehow not kill us, because there's also
Or,
evidence that man walked with dinosaurs.
mm-hmm.
So, so not a single theory. Everything is theories and opinions.
Oh,
And
100%, yeah.
the only thing that we can trust is what we see for ourselves and what we measure for ourselves. And with the Experiencer Support Association, the philosophy on that essentially is, no matter what your belief is, help each other, don't fight each other, work together. Once you figure out, so what if the earth is flat? So what if if God doesn't exist? So what if aliens exist and we're working for them? Right now, they're not eating us. They're not hurting us. They're not doing anything.
Well,
Unless
let me
you're
ask you that, though.
an experiencer so there are experiencers that experience this phenomenon. So is that God? Is that extraterrestrial? Or is that the government implanting these ideas so that way when God returns, we think he's the bad guy? Because
I could see that.
they took over when they know God has been absent. They also have to be prepared for when daddy comes home. And if we believe our people over them, this fake alien invasion and all this other stuff going on makes sense because we're afraid. But it's Ragnarok time. Like,
have you heard about that? That people are hearing supposedly that in 2024 the aliens are supposed to invade, and that the UFO release was them trying to test how ready we'd be.
Well, that would make sense. I've also heard 24. In part of my download experience, 2024 was the year of contact. This year for me is Unity. The year before that was Deconstruct. Yeah. So, anyways, I had this 5-year plan essentially of how the world was going to unfold with this vision of mine. And so far, every year has just been the theme of what things have been happening. So, contact for me was 2024, and I learned about that from other circles, just recently, that is also a shared date. So I find I resonate with that quite a lot because I didn't hear about it until I knew about, like many years after I knew about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense completely. And I mean, I see the whole idea of like humans and dinosaurs living together.
Mm-hmm.
I think we still do to some degree, because I mean, and this is one of my favorite topics in the freaking world, but because you got Macaulay Mbembe over in Africa, and you have raptors and a tribe that worships them in Chile. And you have thunderbirds, which could very well be in the Southwest America, pterodactyls, which live in the cave systems of the Hollow Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean,
many different perspectives and what do they see and what they draw them differently, but they very well could be the same thing. These thunderbirds could be spaceships with fire coming out of the exhaust. These dragons could be that. Dragons could be dinosaurs. Those dinosaurs could be a lie that dragons exist because they have wings. But where are they? Do they still exist? And I'll go back to that map where it shows Antarctica uncovered, no ice. All of the mystical beings exist there on this map. So imagine that the way to wipe them out was to cover that continent with ice. How did that happen? I don't know. But if we could go beyond that, and these beings exist beyond that, it makes sense. But that would also mean that we're in a container. So in order to rationalize and make these things real, we have to accept some of these chaotic theories. And then once you accept some, it starts to make sense, but you still can't prove it. So,
I
The only thing, the safe route is be good to everybody and hope that when we die, we go somewhere.
I mean, have you heard the theory? Have you heard about Macaulay and Mbembe though? Because some people haven't.
Yeah, Alex Mistretta, the cryptozoologist that I mentioned earlier, who fights me tooth and nail that Bigfoot is not a extraterrestrial being. He studies that quite a lot, and he's quite knowledgeable on that. And I've learned quite a lot from him on that.
Well, Lisa actually asked, well, kind of, or stated, is there a God, or is it what people made for their own beliefs, customers and needs? And I kind of could see that, like that's or a control mechanism is what they were making God, is what God got made for, is a control mechanism.
Well, we'll come back to Ghostbusters, where we started at the beginning. Just recently in my mind, Gozer comes out and says, "Are you a god?" And no, I'm not. Okay, then die. So so obviously there's some factions there, right? And of course, Winston always says, "Ray, next time you're asked if you're a god, you say yes." I love that. But I mean, what is a god? A god is someone we revere, and it's interpreted. It's someone empowering. I could be a god to someone if they worship. You could be a god. It depends on that worship, where that comes from. So so ancient astronaut theory, right? That's us sitting here, and we all of a sudden have the Anunnaki show up here, and they teach us all this other stuff, and we learn all these things, and then they leave, right? We're on this planet now. Imagine we're able to leave this place and we're able to land on the moon. That happened, and there was civilization on there. Would we not appear to them as gods if they were inferior to us?
Yeah, I mean, it's happened. It's a common trope on a lot of science fiction shows that we go to another planet and we're considered gods because of everything we can do. But
you know what I am more concerned about? I'm not concerned about us landing on a planet, again, allegedly, if we can get there, and finding extraterrestrial life. I'm concerned about us landing on another planet and finding human life, more of us. That would be more frightening than...
Yeah, I mean,
anything.
There's that famous meme on Facebook I always see, and it makes you think, because it says, it's like, what if Adam and Eve were the last two Martians leaving a dying planet and they crash landed on Earth?
Yeah, that's very possible. And if you pay attention to look closer to the Sumerian stories or of creation, it's quite possible that the battle and everything took place on Mars, and then they left Mars and came here. So there's some evidence to suggest that too. But did they come to another planet, or did they create this environment simulation? Because the Matrix, wow, I didn't think I could find another rabbit hole to go, but there's one there.
Yeah, I mean, well, I had one guest on. I don't remember who the hell they are. I really got to look back at my episodes to try to figure it out, but because I bring this up all the time, and I never can give them credit for it. But they had a theory that, well, they didn't have a theory. They heard a theory that there was actually, I think I know what the guess was. There was basically a cube where Earth is now in space, and extraterrestrials built Earth around it, and the corners of the cubes are the pyramids that are all around Earth. So basically, it slid on like a child's toy, almost like when a child slides the ball over the cube.
Yeah, that's weird. Haven't heard that one yet, but that's interesting.
What if that's true? What if we're all living in that cube and we're in the Matrix plugged in, and the world we live on is just what they create around the cube?
Well, what if when we dream, we wake up?
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, that's right with the Matrix theory too. That's trippy. That's trippy. But
we don't. This could be the dream.
I mean, if this is a dream and I could do a paranormal podcast in it, I'm down with that. But that's 100% true.
Well, what is reality like? That this is enjoyable. You
Yeah,
know,
that's when that's the question that you ask when your mind starts clicking like it's about to explode like a bomb.
is this a fantasy because it's worse out there? And that's the reality when they get unplugged from the Matrix, is that it's worse out there and everything is fun in this fantasy world. But there's,
Yeah, I get that 100%. I mean,
but how do you prove that? You have to die.
exactly.
You have to die.
I mean,
and I'm a big activist on anti-suicide. So, I mean, I really don't want to encourage people to who believe that there's a guaranteed afterlife, and they think by doing things like that, they're going to automatically connect to this source. It hasn't been proven either. This idea with ghosts in the afterlife might be some evidence that there is some energy that exists after we die, but we can't even determine whether or not that energy belongs to a spirit that we think it belongs to, or it's just our imagination and our beliefs and our wants. So even in that, it's misinterpreted. So there's so much risk. So what I'm trying to say is, let's just live our life the best way we can, and when it's our time to go, it's our time to go. And if there's something out there for us in the end, we'll know then.
I agree. I mean, I definitely am against suicide as well. I am not an advocate for it, but I mean, it's just, yeah. I mean, what if when we go, we are unplugging from the Matrix, and the world we go to is just horrible. Like it's a destroyed world. It's just us being slaves or cogs in a machine, and maybe that's what people see when they see hell. Because I've talked to a lot of people on the show with NDEs, and a lot of them have differing stories about where you go and what you see.
Oh, NDEs. Let's talking about having a non-disclosure agreement is a breach of a non-disclosure agreement. I just want to put that out there from a lot.
Oh, no. NDEs, not NDAs.
Oh, I thought you said NDA. Pardon me.
No,
so
NDEs. Yeah.
I heard NDA. I am sorry. Okay. Yeah. So that's just another UFO problem with this NDA thing is another buzzword. But I just wanted to point that out. NDA, saying you have an NDA is against the NDA. Sorry, I just got. My wife doesn't know I'm doing a podcast. 1 second.
It's all good. But I mean, yeah, I mean, some people with NDEs just have different stories about what happened when they died, and when they came back, and they come back, but their stories are different about what happened. Which, if it was basic religion following,
did they go to the next place, or did they come back to reality? Right, like it's so, and I can understand why people want to go there because it's fascinating and it's interesting, but that's on the belief that what we have right here, that there's something better, but it also could be worse. So what we need to do is make the present as best as possible, because this is where we are, and this is the only thing we can guarantee right now.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's just, I mean, I've had NDE experiencers tell me that, I've had 2 different ones say they saw hell. One of them said they saw purgatory and they saw heaven too. One said he stood in a dark room, and a door opened, and there was a figure in the door. He couldn't see what the figure looked like, but it was a shadow figure in the door, and they talked for 3 days until he decided to come back.
Well, when you have this belief already, and you go to these places, you're going to see things that are familiar with your beliefs. So what happens if someone who is agnostic or atheist doesn't, and was born that way, was raised that way, doesn't even know all the things we talked about today? What do they see when they have an NDE?
Well, I mean, I can't remember if any of the people I wrote. No, everybody I ever talked to was always brought up Catholic or Christian, but
and that's influence. It's influence because we believe that that's what's happening. So that might be real. Nothing could happen.
mind-blowing. I said a mind-blowing idea here. What if agnostics and atheists who are born that way? What if when they die, they just die? They don't have NDEs because they have nothing to believe in, so they just shut them down.
And then that maybe it doesn't exist. Maybe that's the reality. Because if we built so if that is true, because if you look at the individual, nothing lost, nothing gained. I didn't know that. When I die, nothing happened. I know that. I'm going to live my life as long as I can because I know that this is all I have. But on the other side, I believe in heaven. I believe in this. And I know that it's guaranteed. And I look for it. And then I die. And then I'm like, what the fuck is this? This isn't heaven. This isn't what this is. Hell, this is worse. What is this? There's that reality too. It could be much worse than we believe it to be. And then we're stuck with it. So I think it might be easier to believe it doesn't exist, but it doesn't matter. You just got to live your life.
I mean, that's exactly the way I do it. I mean, I live my life. I'm not trying to live for any deity or any person besides my kids and my wife. But like other than that, I ain't living my life for any reason. And I don't know. It's just I believe in spirits. Yes, I 100% do because I have one in my garage. Like I believe in it. I've seen the video proof of it, and I have talked to enough people who have seen spirits to believe it. It's 100% true. I mean, that many people can't make up stories and have me believe them. That's just impossible.
Right.
I mean, you can tell when someone's lying, usually, at least I can to some degree, unless they're master at it, which I don't think any of them are. They're just regular people like you and me who investigate things. There are a lot of fakes out there, like you said in the first half of this show. There are a lot of fakes out there, and what I don't know who they are exactly, but someone just got busted. Like in my group of paranormal investigators I talked to online, someone just got hugely busted, and they are now being accused of using fake evidence to try and make themselves famous. But so I mean, it happens all the time, though. It happens every couple months. So some group has been faking their evidence, like it comes out.
Right.
But I mean, I don't know. It's just I don't know.
You're. I don't know if you can hear me, but I can't hear you. I can't hear you. You're muted.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I was just about to write you a sticky note. I was going to say I can't hear you.
I
didn't know if you could hear. I didn't know if you could hear me.
There we go. There we go. That's better.
There we go.
Yeah, sorry, my headset wanted to die on me, but
It's okay.
So I mean, it's funny because I had a paranormal investigator, Lon Strickler, out of Pennsylvania, tell me that he has reports of dragons coming out of Pennsylvania mines.
Okay.
So I mean, it's to me, it's a whole like, are they real type thing? Like, are dragons still existing since dinosaur times, or?
But I'm just saying, it's just it would be all over the place because we can't tame them, we can't control them. They're powerful, so they may have used to exist, or they exist on this plane somewhere else. And when we're using our minds, we're seeing them elsewhere. But it might not be in space. It might not be. It might be in the future. It might be in the past. It might be somewhere else on this planet that we don't know about. Otherwise, all these things would just be free roaming like we are.
But what if they're intelligent enough to realize human beings are killing us?
Well, if they're super intelligent, then we are ants. We're not needed at all.
I'm not saying super intelligent. I mean, it's the same as what a lot of people believe about Sasquatch, Bigfoot. Like, a lot of people don't believe that he's super intelligent, but he's intelligent enough to know.
Yeah.
These creatures, humans, kill me when they see me, or they used to at least kill me in ancient times when they saw me. So I'm going to go hide. And I'm going to go stay away from them and avoid them like the freaking plague.
Right.
what if dragons are that intelligent too, or dogmen too? Like that, maybe that's why they attack us when they see us, because they're scared we're going to try to kill them first.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's not. But okay, so I'm just looking at the time. I'm getting paged here. I am over the time that I have another timing that I forgot about. So
it's all good. It's all good.
I'm reminded of that. So if we could make another question, or
I mean, why don't you just tell listeners where they can find you?
Yeah, okay. So you can find me personally on Facebook at facebook.com/Heat in the World. I'm also on Twitter. I'm more active on Facebook. Facebook's the best place for me. The Experiencers Support Association is the group that I've created. There's resources there for investigators, resources for experiencers. There's a podcast on there. It's called Beyond the Tinfoil Hat that airs every Thursday at 8 p.m. And it might get postponed for a little bit because I have to get caught up on some cases. But on the website, there's examples of my work, latest update declassified documents. There's latest investigations. There's, the latest stuff and whatnot as well. So that's experiencersupport.org. And there's a page on there. If you find it, so search for it. It'll link you to everything else that I've ever done. So.
All right. Well, I'm glad we have you on, and we'll definitely have you back at some point because I'm sure we could talk for another hour and a half. So
yeah, I'm sure we could. And I would keep going too, but it's Saturday morning, and
I get it. And my
everybody's up now, so I got to go.
Yeah, my kids are getting active too, so I understand. So, yeah. But all my listeners know where they can find me and where they can see me. Wherever you're watching this, please like and subscribe, or wherever you're listening, please like and subscribe. And Ryan will definitely get you on again at some point. And I advise all my listeners, go listen to his podcast, because I'm going to. I just listening to him talk for the last hour and a half, I am interested in everything that he comes across. So
the podcast, just to be clear, is this one is designed to give opportunities for others to explore how they come to the reason that they are. So the investigative stuff that you really want to get into, there's a program called Uncharted Case Files. But I do a segment at the end of the podcast where I usually talk about this stuff. But that podcast itself is more so an interview based. I either believe you or I don't, though. It's kind of interesting because I'm an investigator. So you tell me, and we'll go from there.
So it's kind of like the format of this podcast to a degree, almost. So my listeners will enjoy that. So because if it's about the guests mainly, then that's what my listeners look for. So.
Yeah, I'm a different host than I am a guest, so it's quite the difference.
Oh, it's all good, and we will hi and bye, Charles. Sorry you missed it, but you can always watch it on replay. And I will be back on Monday, I believe, with our interview to all my watchers and listeners. I'll see you in half a week. Thank you once again, Ryan, and everybody else. Have a good Saturday.